Hi everyone, I'm going to take you through the process of designing this seating chart for my client. We have some florals that we used on the rest of her pieces that are just from Creative Market. You can purchase stock images in a lot of different places. And we've already gotten this top portion kind of approved, but now she finally sent over the data. We did want it in a spreadsheet. I don't love when they send it over by table. This is how she wanted to do it. And in general, I would alphabetize these by table numbers. Again, this is what the client wanted to do, and she wanted to keep the dates together. I think that's really important, but alphabetizing can make it a little bit easier for the guests to find their names. However, this is how the client wanted to do it, and so I am moving forward with that. So she sent it here, so all I've done is just copy and paste the tables into here, and I've kept them very clearly in their order, just so that I know which ones are for which table. Now I'm going to make all the changes to the text that I need to for everybody. So we're going to use the eyedropper tool. This is just a letter that I brought over from their other pieces, so I can make sure we got the same shade of gray. We're going to want these centered, and we're going to want to change the font. And for a seating chart, you generally will want to go with all caps because you can end up getting a better read in the same amount of space. Part of what's difficult about a seating chart is making it big enough that people can read it and small enough that it fits on the page. This client is going to be getting this one printed locally, so I'm just creating a design file for her. So now what we want to see is how we want to align them. You're generally going to have a little bit of a header. So even though these have different numbers of names on them, we're gonna probably want them to be aligned at the top, just because that's gonna make it not look weird when we add our headers up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through every row and top align them so that they're all in alignment. And then we're going to do something similar for each column, but these we all want to be center aligned. And then we'll go through and center align them on the page as well. So this column needs to be center aligned to the artboard. There we go. And then this column, so because the names are different links, you're gonna find that you need to kind of eyeball this, because actually this is a really great example because there's no really long names on this right side, but there are some really long names on this left side, which is actually creates an interesting dynamic. So if we were to spread these out evenly, you're probably gonna look more crowded on the left because those names are just a little bit longer. So we're gonna want to eyeball it instead of using the Illustrator function in order to do that. Still keeping that middle column in the middle, but kind of creating a way that this doesn't look. Actually, I'm gonna move this over a little. It's not always advised, don't always do that. And then I'm going to move each column down a bit such that we have space for all of the little headers. And then what do we need? So sometimes I'll do a table one, and sometimes I'll just do a number one. It just kind of depends on what the piece is looking like. I'll try both and we'll see what happens. You generally want to distinguish the headings from the script in some way, whether that's name, font, script, whatever. I'm going to start with font and color, and see where we go from there. I think this is how I'm gonna wanna do this here, but you know, it can depend. You don't always, every seating chart is its own beast because all the names are a little bit different than anyone else's. And then we'll just add 12 of these. So I've gone through and done the same thing as far as aligning all these headings and then changing them to the right table numbers. Again, this is kind of going to be something that you eyeball because there's going to be extra space that looks different in different places based on the number of names at each table. For instance, there is a little bit of extra white space here because this table is shorter, and also up here, and then a little bit more down here, really around table 9. It appears to be a lot more white space than anywhere else, but there's not a whole lot we can do about that. I think I could make some of the text bigger, and one of the positive things about having different colors for the headings and the text is that if you did want to change all of the text, for instance, then I could do select same and use same fill color. You could also, of course, put the headings on a different layer or group them differently, whatever you want to do. But if you have the different colors, that's just a really helpful tip. This is the same color, but it's not a text object. There we go. So I could try making this text a little bigger. I don't think I'm going to like it, mostly because these left names are so much longer than the middle and right names. I think it's going to crowd things a bit. But I do sacrifice a little bit of design in favor of making names bigger because it's just always better to have them as large as possible because that's just going to be the most functional thing for your guests. So I'm going to move these down a little bit more. If this is not going to go on an easel or something, you do want to pay attention to not putting names too close to the bottom. If it's going to be sitting on the ground, for instance, it's really hard for people to read down towards the bottom. So that's going to be something that you kind of want to pay attention to. I think that we want to make this a tad shorter at the top and just move everything, space everything out a little bit more. If you can get any sort of line spacing, so while we're limited horizontally, we have a little bit of space that we could play with vertically. So I might grab these and just get a tiny bit more vertical space just to spread things out. I think that is nice, but now I think the text is potentially a little too big, so I'm going to go back to the text and just go down 1 or 2, but keep that line spacing. So making the text bigger makes it easier to read. Line spacing also makes it easier to read. And then I'm going to bring these two over a tiny bit more. Technically, this middle one is not right in the middle, but I think that visually it evens out. And then I'll move this up some more so that Janice Kovash down here is not so close to the bottom. Sometimes you can do things like, move this, you move table 5 up if you want the spacing between each one to be the same. I kind of prefer for these table headings to be on the same level instead. That, for my eye, that feels a little bit better, even though there is some empty space in certain places. But with a table, with a seating chart, you don't necessarily get to do everything exactly how you'd ideally do it, just because you have to get everyone in. And the most important thing is the functionality of it. Yes, of course, we want it to be aesthetically pleasing as well, but we do the best we can. And I think this is a good spot for now. I'm going to run this by the bride and see if she has any adjustments. Thanks for following along.